Hey, everybody, and welcome to my show. So, this is episode number two. And in this episode, I'm not going to be interviewing anyone. This technically should have been the introductionary episode, the one that I usually would have started with. But in my first episode, I interviewed Javier from Palma Solutions, and it's located in Costa Rica, but he ships out to everyone in the US. If you want to try his products, I interviewed him because his company, they make detoxing products, they make wellness products, and I tried the colon kit and I really liked the results. It was pretty amazing for me. So I got so excited and I asked him to interview. He said yes. So we just got the ball rolling and I was like, you're gonna be episode number one. So if you've been following me for a while, you do know that I had a podcast a few years ago during the pandemic. And that one was more it was beginning to be a big conspiracy podcast because of like the people we were interviewing and the topics that we were talking about. Even though that podcast was called the Spiritual Expansion Podcast, I don't feel that it was doing what it was saying it was doing, like spiritually expanding you. I think it was kind of just feeding you more into that path of like, okay, I don't trust the government or I don't trust this and that, what can I trust? Like, who can I trust? Like, what's real? And I don't like that kind of vibe. Mainly, it just didn't follow through and it didn't continue because of just business partnerships. And like in a lot of business partnerships, not to say that they don't end well, but they don't always see the fruition because of complications in the relationships among people. And that's just kind of what happened with that podcast. It didn't fit, really what I was trying to do anymore. It wasn't like working out between me and the other person. So it ended. And, I just give thanks to it because even though things don't get completed or things don't end up where you wish they were or where you wanted them to be, it doesn't mean that it was a negative experience. I learned a lot in that. I learned how to kind of do my own setup, for the most part. I got the confidence to come up here and be able to do this now on my own. And even though I have been doing live videos on Instagram for the past couple years and I was really good at it, it's still something different having to set up and organize a podcast, do all the technical stuff, even plan ahead for it, script it, like really, get people involved in it, work together with them. We were Zooming people on the interviews. I believe, well, I don't know if it was the first, second one, but in the first or second episode, we interviewed the human vibration, which was really big on Twitter for conspiracies. And I don't know what she does now or what she's really, really into. I didn't really follow with her after that because it was my partner's idea to get her on the show. But I got sent this video of a podcast the other day, and it was a podcast where they had the human vibration and Dan Winters on there. So I was like, oh, Dan Winters is on my resonance a little bit because I had interviewed human vibration and now she's on a show with Dan Winters. That was pretty cool. Even though I think what they were talking about was a little bit out of her league, but it was still a good show, it was still a good podcast, and she was on there. So if you're seeing this, what's up, girl? But I don't really stick or like really get involved so much in the whole conspiratorial avenue anymore because of like just what it can do to the mind or what it can do to people where they get fragmented and they start to become paranoid. And now, everything that happens to them that is supposed to be exposing something, if it goes wrong, they want to go ahead and start blaming somebody or something. There's an agent, it's the government. And I don't like that vibe. It's not conducive to anybody, not even to me. And it can really debilitate your mind for many reasons. But now I'm just doing a show based on like, things that can be spiritually related, but mostly are like feel good. They're like life lessons. I can tell you a little bit about my life, my experiences, and what I'm going through, and hope that it shines some kind of light in your life, or even just walking this path of like illumination or enlightenment, trying to be a beacon of light for others, trying to live an authentic life, spiritually authentic. It can get very lonely. And I just want to be that clear voice for people who are walking this path of really what you're doing is you're like teaching yourself to be better and live a better life and not just illuminate or enlighten yourself, but also elevate yourself, and not just yourself and your status, not just your finances, but in the way that you think and the way that you even behave, treat others, and the way that you interact with others. And initially, it's just a ripple effect of how you influence other people, with your own energies. And are those energies positive ones? Are you influencing people the right way? Are you empowering them? Are you disempowering them? And a lot of the conspiracy stuff is very disempowering. Not only that, it does make you feel a little powerful because you're like, oh, I know something that someone else doesn't know. But then that's where it gets like a little dissolved or converted, not converted, but like inverted, and it starts to feed the ego more than it starts to feed the soul. So conspiracies more for the egocentric, and like I just want to, basically I'm creating a reality for myself, and in this reality I am doing things in a balanced or a wholesome way. And I want to be able to illuminate paths like that for other people, to not have to feel like they don't have any options or feel like there's not enough choices in the world. There's plenty of choices. And just you and the way you move and the way that you speak every day is influencing, your tomorrow or your next year. And how like just being able to like self correct these like destructive forces that we have inside of ourselves, because through our childhood and, trusting a lot of the stuff that we've seen on TV or just things in the public have made us a certain way, have created energies inside of us that really need to be tamed. And it's just so easy to just go off with ego and get carried away, but you can lose yourself, you can lose your mind, you can debilitate your relationships by not having a balanced or a whole perspective on things, right? Or being very one sided or being very selfish. It doesn't get you anywhere. And so, um, having been that kind of person before in the past, very egocentric, very selfish, very like, oh, all about me, like, like feed that energy into myself and myself only. I can tell you that it just doesn't work, and it's not creating an abundant life. It's more so just creating more karmic obstacles for you in your future that you need to learn from. And it's just easier to know when you're given a lesson in that moment so you don't have to repeat it again in the future. And that's what I'm here to do. That's my intention with this podcast, with this show, whatever you want to call it. It can be entertainment for you, but it's also educational in my intentions with it. I hope to educate you and illuminate you and really help, open up and enlighten and bring positive forces and positive thinking to a life where, can sometimes feel very, like I said, lonely when you're walking this path. You can feel very alone, especially if your family members or people around you aren't doing the same type of work. Maybe they're not as like strict with themselves. Maybe they're just not as level headed. And in that circumstance, for that same reason, maybe you kind of are level headed or you're working towards that. And the people around you, if they're not working towards it or if they're not seeing that clearly, they may just be fiending or feeding off of your energy or your vibration, and it could be throwing you off. So if you don't know how to really like man your ship, how to really like be a stable force, or if you don't know how to reach that mindset of not being affected by the energies around you, or if you're not allowing those forces outside of yourself to influence your mind and your mood, then that's a great mindset to have, to be able to deal with those different integers and those different situations that you're going to get yourself into with other people around you who aren't doing the work, who aren't trying to better themselves, who aren't self-reflecting, who aren't, turning their bad habits into better habits or more conducive habits. So it gets lonely because there's not a lot of people doing this. There isn't a lot of people trying to self-correct themselves. There isn't a lot of people who reflect on the things that they say and do and how they affected the people around them. There isn't, and some people may think that they are, but then you hang out with them long enough to realize like you really aren't like this. Like you are very like bipolar and you don't even realize it, but you keep blaming other people outside of yourself except for yourself. And yet you're the one who's very like very moody and very like not stable or not balanced, right? And I've been in a workplace where I've had to deal with someone who was an extreme manipulator and extremely um just yeah, manipulating and controlling towards others, always trying to control everyone else, always calling other people names, even like students calling them like control freaks, and not realizing or not recognizing that in themselves that they're that way. I had a boss where she would hide the supplies. Like the supplies had a place. It was in the cabinet. We could easily reach them. And there were days just out of controlling, out of being, that force of just always wanting to be on top and in control and always trying to be the boss, hiding the supplies, putting them somewhere where we would actually have to go and ask her for it. So now she would start timing when we started the task and how long we took on the task. She was in control of, whether we were able to grab it or not. So it was just a control thing. And then this same lady would tell me that kids who were manipulating situations and crying, on cue, that they were control freaks and they were doing it out of control. And it was just funny to me for that lady to be saying something like that, because I realized, like, do you not recognize that in yourself though? How you're an extreme control freak, how you are micromanaging every single step of our day, and you even do it to other people who are not supposed to be under your supervision. So those kind of people, I don't want to say start recognizing those kind of people, because there are people like that that just have that core energy of manipulation or being in control, but that force can be in anyone. It can be in your neighbor next door who's like super nice and super giving. She comes over and gives you extra food when they have leftovers. Like even that neighbor could could have tendencies like that at some point in their life, if they're not someone who's very in control or very balanced. And so that force of control or manipulation could be within anybody. And it's just a matter of your work being able to recognize it and not being manipulated by that force when it's not in your best interests, right? Because someone could give you a suggestion, and maybe that person isn't intending to manipulate you. Maybe they're not that type of person. And in those situations, you maybe need to hear out that person. Maybe they have more experience in whatever is going on, and that's why they're giving you a better suggestion. Not to say you always have to take their suggestions, but if they're not coming from that intent of wanting to manipulate you, then at least hear them out, right? Because there's sometimes where we cut off people, or we don't want to listen to them, but maybe they have, all kinds of energies where you do need to listen to them. Maybe they have rights to where, okay, I should hear them out, I should listen to what they have to say, instead of disregarding everything because you think you know everything. So just recognizing when someone is trying to be manipulating or when they're just actually trying to help you, and not getting yourself stuck into situations or being manipulated by the manipulator and then saying, gosh, why did I do that? Why did I listen to that person? Why did I let myself do that? Or why did I let it happen? And that's because you didn't recognize the force intentionally or initially when you were starting to create a reaction or even verbalize something. So, like, those are all little things that do help you along the way in your life to actually make better decisions for yourself and not always be led by other forces, kind of always leading your own way, but knowing when you're getting kind of on the egotistic side and just not hearing anyone out and not hearing any suggestions from people who actually may have more experience than you, and having that balance, because having that balance because you can really make big different opportunities and pathways, you know when you recognize the forces and move accordingly. But if you're just like laid back all day, like just not trying to be aware of your choices, not trying to be aware of the energies around you, then your day will go wherever it wishes to go, wherever it wants to take you, instead of you leading the day or you leading, your life with intention and everything. So that's just something I had to put out there because it's really important when you're trying to find balance in your life, when you're trying to, walk this path of illumination or of higher self, and then not be affected by like the distorted forces, in which those distorted forces can be within you. I'm not saying they're always in other people. They're sometimes within you, right? When I say you're not being aware enough, you're being ignorant, or you're not listening to everybody, right? Because if you're just always saying like, no, that person's wrong, they're not woke, they don't know anything, they don't practice this stuff, then it's like you're really doing yourself a dishonor because you may be missing a lot of lessons. And like I said, you don't want to repeat lessons later on because you didn't recognize them initially. So that's a big thing. That's something that's really been helping me this month, really working towards that. And not that alone, but just like the community that I do, I'm in contact with. Like I'm in the university. Like if you know, then you know. If you don't know, then um, oh well. But being in the university, taking the courses, connecting with the people that are like minded or on my vibration really helps. And so, like, if you don't have that kind of community, at least we have things like this. We have our phones, we have YouTube, we have the internet to connect with others like us. Like for this instance, this podcast, that's all it's intended for, really, is for it to be there for you. If you don't have that community around you, if you don't have people around you that are doing the work, well, at least, hey, you can tune into this and you'll hear from someone who's real, someone who is doing the work, something, they're doing something that is working for them. And, I can actually see that instead of being discouraged or feeling depressed or feeling lonely, or like if I just like don't matter or don't have anything to offer like you do. And I'm here to tell you that. And that's why this show exists. That's why this channel exists. That's why there's many other people like me as well doing it. But at least for me, um, I'm here to be a lighthouse for any of it. So that's just my introductionary flow that I wanted to put out there for the intentions of the show. So, going back to how easy it can be to get ourselves into drama, because in life it can be very easy. And like I said, walking on this path of illumination, it doesn't always mean that it's going to be like super smooth. You're going to run into situations like things that test you, or just situations that just need your stability, that need your level headedness. And if you're not in that state of level headedness, you're not in that state, right? And I'm talking about a state where you're not allowing those outside forces to influence you or your mood or shift you back and forth. Like if you can be in that state of, true authenticness and yourself, then when drama does arrive, it's like you want to be that lighthouse, that beacon, to be able to almost be like a traffic. What are those people called? Like the traffic patrol people that used to be on the roads, at least I think in the UK, directing traffic, right? Like they like maybe they get upset, maybe they're real people, sometimes traffic upsets some people, piss them off, but they need to be in a state of unjudgment. So like, hey, someone, cuts off another car, I'm not going to be all judgmental and then now like cut off the other traffic just to piss that guy off too, like he pissed me off. Being balanced is like, okay, that guy did something dumb, I'm not going to allow him to manipulate my energy or my balanced force. So I'm going to keep doing what I do and not reacting to those situations that are triggering you all the time. And that's really powerful if you can get to that state. So being able to avoid drama is easy when you can put yourself in that state, of not being hindered, not being triggered by distorted forces. Because once you allow that distorted force to start distorting your energy, then it's too late. You've already lost yourself and you're not living what you say you want to live. So that's why there's very few of us out here doing that work. But just to remind you, it does work for people. There is a formula and you just have to not give up on yourself. Also, even just like how I brought up interviewing Palma Solutions, that's a big part of it too. I mean, I was getting anxiety because I was drinking 2 cups of coffee every day, but it's because I had all that stuff in my gut that I ended up cleaning out with his colon cleanser. And that's something that had been in my body like my whole life, because I had never cleaned my body out that much to where I saw things like that coming out of me. And so now I can drink 2 cups of coffee and not get anxiety. But that's because that didn't take mental work. It didn't take spiritual work. It took physical work of having to do a detox or having to do something in order to remove the parasites that really do truly control the way you think or the way you act sometimes. Because it's like those parasites were making me get up in the middle of the night to eat something sweet because they were like, hey, I'm hungry. You didn't have any sweets. So get it in your body. And they can do that. So that's what the first episode was about, really just getting physically light, physically aware of self, and harmonically aware of your physical body. But now it's like the second episode, like let's work on the mind a little bit, because that's really what kind of starts messing things up if you don't have it balanced enough. Or let's work on your tone, let's work on the way you speak. What are you putting out there? Because every word and every action that you do, like I said, it's building your next day. It's really creating those ripple effects in your life with the people around you and with anything that you get into, because it's just vibrating around you and you're vibrating to it. So like, let's find some harmony. Um, yeah, so we allow forces to influence our mood. Let's not do that anymore. Different variations of it could be like someone, like I mentioned, someone manipulating you in the family, at work, anything like that. Those things are easily avoided when you find balance in your mind and just in your soul too, because sometimes the mind is saying things, and if your soul is not in harmony, it's going to start acting out what the mind is saying. But being able to be that higher force and that mediator within all the forces in your body, your mind, your verbalizing, your verbal self, your soul, your energy field, you know? And yeah, so like all of that also, just to say, has helped my dream space a lot, along with different like habits that I've been able to convert. I've been able to change within myself. The dream space is really different. And it really, like when people talk about lucid dreaming, sometimes they say that it can affect your mood during the day. And like, I'm just here to say that it does, because you do experience things so vividly in the dream that you realize like this reality, this waking life, it's a lot like it. And it's like, I don't only have this waking life anymore. Like, I have my dream space. Now I have that other world that I've like, let's just say I've gotten access to, and I'm able to do things there that maybe I can't do here. And it really makes a big impact in your mood, because you realize like even the things that you think here are impossible to do, if you do them in your dream space, you don't realize how much it empowers you as a person, because you're like, oh, well, it's just a dream. Well, there's not a lot of people that can do things in their dream, like, you know, plus or minus a few people can't even remember their dreams, or right, people say they don't have any. So it's really powerful when you can dream, write it down, put that intention out there, because a dream space is something that if you can't recall or really like, maneuver yourself around, it could be a disadvantage. But it's a high advantage when you can, I'm sorry, when you can move in there, when you can dream, when you can recall it, when you can experience things in the dream. It influences the mood, because it influences these possibilities and even the creativity in your mind, because there's just like, different things going on there that don't happen here. And so when you see other spaces, other realities, or other worlds, if you want to call it, and you come back to this one, you're just like, it's just a different perspective. So definitely harmonizing in that space, if you have intentions to do so, can help you on your journey. And yeah, so being that force, manipulating forces using guilt. Yeah. So make sure that guilt is not creeping up on you. Make sure that you don't make yourself feel guilty. If you do in any way, maybe you're holding something in and you need to release it, whether it be like maybe something you did wrong, or maybe you felt like you offended someone, like we have to work on that. You can't hold that in. You have to reach out to that person, say sorry, let it go. Or even when you're talking to yourself in the mirror, maybe do some yoga, get active. Like I woke up with a headache this morning, and definitely I was like, what's going on? Is it because I got woken up by that leaf blower, by the gardeners outside? I don't know what it is, but I felt tense in my body. So when I started to stretch, it just started going away. And I was like, okay, so maybe I just need to burn some things off. Maybe I just need to get a little physical, because I haven't in a few days. So even just little things like that, like if you're not physical at all, like that could be a good start for you. And realizing that there's levels to it, and starting off one by one, not overwhelming yourself with everything all at once in that moment. Like, really breaking it apart and working on something one at a time, especially so that you can see the difference and you can measure your growth, like measure, where you're going with things and what's working for you and what's not. Because if you start trying to do everything all at once, then how will you know like what's working and what's not? What if you're taking vitamins and you're going on a walk and you're taking some dream herbs, some lucid dreaming herbs, and you're listening to all these things? Like if you do it all at once, it's hard to really find the variables or find what is working and what's not. So just starting off one at a time, just like life in general, when you have stress or when you're worried about everything, like, well, how can we decompress that stress? Well, like, unload it, but like one at a time, not all at once, because it can be very destructive to do everything all at once, right? Even someone like me who is like a five and likes to get involved in a lot of different things, like there needs to be a balance of being able to look at things one at a time, so it doesn't all get, fogged up. But yeah, so that's basically it. That's my intention, like with this coming up, all these coming up episodes of people that I want to interview, they're not going to be talking about, they're not whistleblowers. They're not going to be exposing a bunch of stuff, like you had seen in the last podcast. This is mostly people who are really like doing things that are working for them in their life, that are working, that are creating ripple effects of positivity around others. So that's what we're going to be getting into. So if you want to stay tuned, that's what I'm about. And thanks for joining me now, even if you're listening up until this point. Like, you're really doing something for yourself. You're really trying to help yourself. You're really trying to better yourself and find a solution and find a formula. And you will, because you're already putting that intention out there. And just don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on this little mission of leveling up and self correcting and, being enlightened and becoming a better and whole person. Because there may be times where you feel like you fell all the way down to the floor, and well, who cares now, because I'm out of, I'm off grid. Nobody knows that I'm not about it no more. Like, people forgot that I was trying to self correct. Like, who cares? Do it for yourself, not for others. Because even if you fall all the way down to the ground and you break your nose, like, your nose is going to heal, and you'll forget about that fall, and then you'll be on to the next thing. So yeah, thanks for joining me, and that was basically it. So have a great rest of your day. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them behind.